come, they're like, moi je parle français, hein. Moi là, j'ai un passeport hein, qui me laisse aller dans plusieurs pays. Ma gogo, t'es toujours fauché toi. Anyone who lives in Nairobi has my accent. Let me tell you, simple example. And then when you arrive at the port, there's a lot of headaches. Every port is a pain in the butt, even in the US, especially with AGOA and tariffs. Oh, you want to give it to me? All right, ladies and gents, welcome to the Nohemie Co podcast. Okay, today I want to talk about something that, I may get a lot of hate for this, but who cares? I'm going to talk about it anyway. Why a lot of Westerners fail to do business in Sub-Saharan Africa. I'm going to take the case of the DRC and Kenya because those are the two markets that I operate in. But first and foremost, please subscribe, share my content with someone that you think will find this valuable. For those of you who don't know how social media works, we kind of depend on the subscription and the sharing in order for us as creatives to keep posting content and for me to just keep being motivated to share what I'm learning on the ground with you all. But anyways, let's get started. And oh, by the way, I also have a podcast. What am I talking about? I have a Substack newsletter where I share so transparently about running operations in Africa, especially either if you're an investor or a member of the diaspora. So be sure to subscribe, link below. Okay, so let's get started. And as always, your girl obviously has notes. So when I'm doing this is because I want to stay on topic. But why is it that a lot of Westerners fail to do business in Africa? So how did this conversation even come about? Okay, full transparency. I do business in the DRC. I would say Congo is about 60% of my business. No, actually 80% of my business. And now we're trying to expand also to the Eastern Africas because I live in Nairobi part-time. And so there is this American white dude, full transparency, really nice guy from California. Last year, he reached out to me via LinkedIn. And he was like, hey, I see that you do a lot of business in DRC. I'm in agriculture. We have an office downtown Kenya and Westland. Why don't you come and we can chat and see how we can sort of work together. So full transparency, I do commodity trading with superfoods, honey, moringa, baobab, and hibiscus. How it works, I match buyers and sellers. So sellers are producers in Sub-Saharan Africa, buyers are Western buyers in Gulf Arabia. And so with that, I also have a consultancy firm in DRC where I help people enter the DRC business market and I help them de-risk their investment. But full transparency, I'm very selective. You have to be within our sectors and it has to be a sizable check or equity opportunity that just fits my mantra. If you're not, I'll just say no. So this guy reaching out to me, he does potatoes in Kenya, wants to get into the DRC market. I go to his office and he shares with me how he feels like DRC is an opaque country. I'm pretty much butchering the word, but opaque really means that you know that there's money made in that market, you know that there's opportunities, but getting in, he said DRC is like China. You know money's being made, but to get in feels like no one knows how to get in. Unlike markets like say the United States, where it's quite democratized, especially for the middle class, you can really get in if you do the outreach on email, DM people, and so on. And so when he shared that, it was really interesting to me that he shared that because I was like, I wonder for me it's easy to navigate DRC because I am from Congo maybe, or the fact that I pretty much have lived in Congo full time as a diaspora that came back for the last 4 or 5 years. And then even in this guy's office, no shade, very nice guy. On my left, his co-founder doesn't even get up to say hi. And I'm gonna be honest with you, years ago in California, that would not bother me. But today it does. And not that I think I'm like all high and mighty, and I'm sure his co-founder was busy, but I'm like, no, like you have someone come into your office that you want as a potential business partner. You can't even get up and say hi. And as soon as I sit down, this American guy gets straight into prices. And I'm like, dude, you're producing potatoes, which is a very common commodity in Sub-Saharan Africa. You want to get into the DRC. And I told him, I was like, no problem. Based on what you want, let me reach out to 2 biggest grocery stores in the DRC, Indian owned. They're probably your best bet because instead of you navigating the informal market or DRC, it's better that you go into a more formal B2B structure, which is grocery stores. I pitched it to my 2 network Indian families that own the 2 largest grocery stores in DRC, and they both were like, Nohemie, no, like his prices are too high. Meanwhile, we get our potatoes from our family members out of Uganda, out of Kenya, out of South Africa for way cheaper. And on top of that, our family members, it's a network. So there's leverage for sea freight, for God knows what else beyond just a potato. And I went back to the guy and I told him, I was like, hey, no, they're not interested. And it really got me thinking on a few things. And I think one thing I realized is that there's 3 core problems that the Westerner face when they try to enter the sub-Saharan African market and why they fail. And I think the number one that we need to start with is the transaction trap. And so the transaction trap is you're trying to close the contract before you can build trust. Let me be frank and direct here, because that's what I do on this podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about emerging markets, developing countries, the majority of the economy is informal. What does that mean? Especially DRC, which is like 90% of the economy is on cash. Most people don't even want to do banks because they don't trust banks, or they fear that they're going to be traced and like pay ridiculous fines. When you're doing business with someone, it's on a trust system. I know that if I work with Nohemie, she's going to deliver. And when you're coming into the DRC, whether you're coming in as a diaspora member, whether you're coming in as an investor, whether you're coming in like this American guy as a commodity trader or agriculture, and your first interaction is, this is my product, this is how much, let's sign the contract, let's keep moving. Honey, you're gonna reduce yourself to pricing. Then it becomes a pricing war, and you're not gonna compete with Chinese pricing and Indian pricing. Cut your losses. And I think the reason why it makes sense to start with trust, I think the people that have nailed this, I really think are Lebanese and Indians, especially Lebanese culture, because the Arabic culture, you literally have to go to that family member's wedding, their cousin's wedding, their niece's baby shower, before they even let you into doing business with them. Why? Because they understand that if I do business with you, the payment is in cash. How do I know that you're not going to go collect the payment and take like $1,000 out? Or how do I know that when you're going to make that transaction, you agree on 30% transaction, you're coming back and lying to me that is 28%, and you fudge the contract? And I think that this is where a lot of Westerners, and this is not just, I don't want to throw shade at this white guy, but like this is even the diaspora. I've noticed that like they come in and then they start with these contracts, and I'm so sorry, paper means nothing, you guys, in an informal economy. In an economy where the legal system is corrupted, where the governance is poor, a paper means squat. What is valuable? Eye contact, handshake, and your word. And that requires trust. And I think this is where there's a Western trap. The Westerner thinks that contracts is the way to go, and that time, horizon, relationship, trust is inefficient. It's like, why should I go drink coffee or tea with you at your house when we could let's just cut the deal and get on with our lives? It becomes like a sales pitch based on volume, whereas from my experience in Sub-Saharan Africa, especially the DRC, I can confidently tell you, I would rather do business with 2 people that I know can either move my goods, I know can either buy my goods, and I trust that when we agree on a price, we agree on a timeline, they will deliver, then bang my head against the wall, pitching to 10, 20 people who in the end is just a headache. And ladies and gentlemen, trust takes time. It just does. And I think in the Western economy, it's become a game of volume. And so a lot of Westerners, when they come to do business in Africa, they wonder why they fail. Trust is the way to go. I think the number 2 problem that I often see
This is World Heritage Site.
is that this one is my, I'm sorry, this one is by far my personal favorite. What people call corruption, I've learned, is actually the price of doing business. And I think this one we need to really clarify here. Let me quickly drink my coffee. Sorry, I'm addicted to coffee, especially with protein inside. Shout out to Vital Protein. If you ever want to sponsor the show, I will welcome it. Anyways, I've realized, first of all, let me just clarify here, not to brag, I'm the daughter of 2 economists. By definition, corruption is usually when public funds are misused, which, let's be honest here, this is sub-Saharan Africa. We know that's a problem. But when you're doing business, whether that's with a facilitator, an individual, that company, it is the price of business to pay someone an additional fee. Why is that? Ladies and gentlemen, it is an incentive. People are incentivized by money, point blank, period. Now, here's what I actually think the whole corruption thing for the West, for the diaspora, for the Western investor becomes a problem. This is actually quite common. I think what it is that I'll give you guys a very simple scenario that I go through with my business all the time. I'm an aggregator. I produce honey, moringa, baobab, and hibiscus. Actually, I don't produce it. I find farmers who do. Once they produce, actually while they're producing, I secure the buyer in the Western market, Gulf Arabia, you name it. And I control the deal flow. So here's what happens. When the producer is done producing the honey, for example, from the farm to the port, there's a company doing that. Luckily for me, in Congo, I have a logistics company. However, if I didn't, in the case of Kenya, which is where we're expanding, I will subcontract it to another company to do the logistics part. And then when you arrive at the port, there's a lot of headaches. Every port is a pain in the butt, even in the US, especially with AGOA and tariffs. Ports are a pain in the butt. I would rather pay someone who I call a facilitator a fee to handle all my paperwork, make sure that my honey gets onto the container, in that water, off it goes. Now, there is a fee to that. And I think what happened is a lot of those facilitators, they don't have a standardized fee. If they had a standardized fee saying for one container is a 20 fee, this is your fee. For this is your fee. I think a lot of Westerners would actually be okay with it because then they're able to predict the cost. But what ends up happening, a lot of these facilitators, their cost fluctuates. And then the Westerner calls that corruption. But let me tell you something. Is it worth your time to be doing the transportation of the goods, get to the port and navigate those people, which you won't? Ladies and gentlemen, navigating bureaucracy in Africa is a PhD on its own, which you cannot. You do not have the language, you do not have the patience, you do not have the mindset for that. It's better just to pay it. Now, here's a caveat with paying that. You need to negotiate. And I think this is actually where a lot of Westerners struggle. One, I get it. I'm a member of the diaspora. I'm going to be fully honest. It's just this past year that I started becoming a negotiator. I know, you're like, Nohemie, how have you been in business and only started negotiating now? Being in sub-Saharan Africa will force you to negotiate. A great example, we were exporting something out of Mombasa port for my company. Let me tell you, I had to pay $450 under the table to someone at Mombasa port to do their job. I'm like, dude, it's your job. The government is paying you. Why are you making me do this? But the sad reality is I look at my container, the margin or the sales that I'm going to make from that container is way higher than $450. And this guy is working at custom. If he doesn't sign the paperwork, my goods are going to be stuck there. So is it worth the time and the peace of mind to become some kind of like advocate and be like, do your job. I'm going to go tell on the government. Which government, boo-boo? Or just pay it. And you know in your books that 450 is not going to get you to the negatives. And I think this is where a lot of the diaspora, the Westerners, the investors, they struggle because they see that as well. Nohemie, that's bribery. Do you think I want to pay that person $450? I don't. However, it's a reality. So rather than me banging my head against the wall and trying to preach to this guy and hoping that he'll change his behavior, you pay him. And you know how I know that the 450 is now in my balance sheet when I do projections? We've exported enough stuff that I now see a pattern in terms of the percentage. When it's a container, ballpark export 450. When it's by air freight, ballpark 200. So here's the thing that I'm trying to say. In other words, these payments, if you really think about it, are not random. They're just negotiated. And I get it. As someone that grew up in Canada, lived in California, now I'm in Sub-Saharan Africa for the last 5 years, negotiation, I've had to build that muscle because I find it draining. Like I have friends of mine, when they go to markets, they love bargaining the price. I hate it. However, I had to learn because even in Kenya, it's in the little things, by the way. When we talk about bribery, corruption, all that. Just no, I'm not even talking at the top level. I'm talking in the day to day. Anyone who lives in Nairobi has my accent. Let me tell you, simple example. I'm changing apartments. I'm looking for curtains. Usually in the West, I will buy it on Amazon. I'll go to Walmart. But no, here, everyone is like, your best bet, just get custom curtains. I literally go to 3 people. I'm like, okay, can you refer me to curtain people? So they refer me to 3 curtain shops. One curtain shop is pricing me at $80. The second one is pricing me as $250. The other one is pricing me at $180. Now, if you go with the cheapest one, maybe he's actually really good at his job, but cheap doesn't always mean quality. And then the highest one, I find out, my friend who's Kenyan, she literally got the same thing done a month ago, because we literally live in the same apartments now. She literally was quoted $100. You realize there's a $150 difference. Why? Because my WhatsApp number is a DRC number plus 243. DRC is associated to minerals. And then the moment this guy came to do the estimate at my apartment, he realized that I was living in an affluent neighborhood in Nairobi. He then heard my English. I speak like someone from America. So the price went up by $150 more. I negotiated with this guy. I was like, listen, I like your work. I've seen what you've done, but you're out of your mind if I'm gonna pay $250. Drop your price to $100. That's my last offer, because I matched what he charged my friend. And guess what? He accepted. And I know even that's draining. Now imagine that at port. Imagine that with government officials. Imagine that with labor. I know it's exhausting, but guys, it's just the reality. Don't try to moralize it. Simply make it in your operational costs. And I think that this is what a lot of Westerners do. They see that $50 bribe or facilitation fee, and then they refuse to operate on principle, because you're the Dalai Lama or you're Jesus or you're Muhammad, and this is your duty to go around preaching to people. I'm so sorry. Yes, if we keep this up, will Africa ever change? I actually think so. Because if you look at a country like Kenya, yeah, a lot of time people can be they can be crooks. There's crooks everywhere. I just came back from Vietnam. However, they've managed to systemize a lot of things. We will get there as a continent. But you'll be fooling yourself if you're trying to get into a market like DRC, Kenya, anywhere actually in Sub-Saharan Africa, when you're coming in trying to moralize and literally getting frustrated and walking away the moment you have to pay someone a fee that it should be part of their job, right?
Do you like things for decoration? Decorate your house?
I love. And I think a third one that I wrote down is the cultural blindness. I think this one is a big one, refusing to learn the local language. I think when I talk about language, I'm not just talking about literally like language, the kind of language you speak, which is the bulk of what I'm going to talk about. But language is also communication, body language, the way you say things, the way you speak. I think a lot of times, whether it's the Lebanese, the Indians, and the Chinese, what they've done really well when they come to do business in Africa, they integrate themselves in the local context and they give it time, especially with language. One thing I noticed in Kinshasa and in Nairobi, the sectors that I believe are the biggest moneymaker: construction, essential foods and goods, and I think another big one now is pharmaceuticals. You notice they speak the local language. Like in Kinshasa, I'll give you a very simple example. I have a farm, I'm in agriculture. We have to do some construction. I'm building a greenhouse. So I needed material to build the greenhouse. So I go to somewhere in Kinshasa called Commerce. That's where a lot of commercial folks are there. And I go to Kenkeri. Kenkeri is like a construction store. I kid you not, most Kenkeri in Kinshasa are owned by the Chinese or by the Indians in the Commerce area. They literally don't speak French. I go there, I'm like, I'm looking for a saw. I'm looking for this. And I'm speaking in French. Monsieur, oui, le blah, blah, blah. You know the Chinese guy looks at me? No. Nalobaka francete, nalobaka francete. I'm like, what? I'm like, how do you not speak French? But then they hit me hard. I was like, Nohemie, look where you are. You are in a busy, buzzing site of Kinshasa in construction. Why does he need to speak French? A colonial language that you got from Belgium, which, by the way, doesn't help us at all to be global economic, the curse of Francophone Africa. like he is making banks. There's so many people buying. People are like pushing each other, buying stuff. He speaks Lingala. In Nairobi, even the Indians, they speak Swahili. And I kid you not, sometimes Black Kenyans will brag about the fact that they studied in England and speak English. You guys, I kid you not, I met this Kenyan guy, Black Kenyan, last week. And he's literally speaking, well, yes, the market opportunity. And I looked at him, I was like, is that how you speak? Or are you like faking your accent? He was like, I've had to teach myself to have an English accent so that I could speak like someone like you. I'm like, oh my goodness. Again, the inferiority complex of the Black man and the Black woman. And I think language is a way to meet people where they're at. When you're going into a market, you're trying to speak the local language. You're trying to speak the communication style. Like, for example, Congo, especially Kinshasa, unlike Kivu, we're very lively in Kinshasa. So when you're trying to do business with us, you gotta be a bit lively, right? And yeah, a lot of people at the high level, they speak French, but once in a while, if you can bust in that Lingala, or you show that you can eat some fufu and some gai, trust, you've made it. Like, you got into the club. Language signals that you're meeting people where they're at. Language signals that you're trying to build and not just extract from this country. And I think a lot of Westerners, investors, business people, or even the diaspora, they fell at this. Like, in Congo, the amount of Congolese diaspora that come, they're like, moi je parle français, hein? Moi là, j'ai un passeport, hein, qui me laisse aller dans plusieurs pays. Magogo, t'es toujours fauché, toi. I'm sorry, like, whereas if you spoke the local language, trust me, I do agriculture and I'm in logistics in Bandundu. I'm constantly speaking Lingala. I'm learning Kikongo, which is literally the language of my tribe. And trust me, me speaking, and my Lingala is so bad. You close your eyes, you think it's an old white woman. But guess what? People appreciate it. And I've noticed the Indians in Kinshasa, the Chinese, the Lebanese, they speak Lingala because they understood that c'est avec le petit peuple that you move the dial. So I think this is a thing that I would heavily advise a lot of Westerners trying to do business. And even in contexts like DRC especially, you want to move goods to DRC, understand that our language, our body language, our livelihood, the way we speak, like the way we love life is part of our traditional values, is part of social hierarchy, and it emphasizes the way we do community. And once you understand that, doing business in the context will be really, really easy. And I think with this this one, what I wanted to sort of close in on is the different things that I think, the different communities that I think are success stories. Let's go, and I think why they're winning. I think number one, I think the Lebanese, they've done a really good job at this, right? Them, it's all about deep integration. These guys are in West Africa, in Côte d'Ivoire, they're like killing it. In Central Africa, literally, and to be fair, right now with everything going on with Lebanon, Lebanese people can't really send money to their country. They can't really go back. So Africa has to become their home. But to their credit, a lot of them have been here for generations. So we cannot discredit that. And I think what they're very good at, they speak the language. Some of them have even married Congolese people, which you don't see as much with Indians, but it's a way to integrate yourself in the culture. I think Indians, what they've done really well in building in Africa is the community as an infrastructure. Yes, to be fair, the Indian community is a tight knit. For you to get in as a non-Indian is really, really hard. But when they do associate with you because they see a leverage, and that's how it should be, in all honesty, relationship should be a win-win, and you become part of the community, and they exchange. What I really appreciate a lot of the Indians is that they're very good at also giving you the right contacts. They're like, this accountant, this lawyer, go for him for this, go to her for that. And that I really appreciate. And I think the third one is the Chinese. To be fair, Chinese people, they do train. However, one thing Chinese community is criticized on is that they don't transfer the knowledge, which, believe it or not, that's actually where I think Americans are very good at, is knowledge translation, knowledge transfer. However, Americans in business, I find from my experience with Americans, they will give you like 1%, and in turn they make 99%. Like, it's baffling to me. I'm sorry, like, it is baffling to me. Like, we just closed a business deal together. You were able to get into this market because of me, and you're only giving me 1%. But I think the Chinese, what they're very good at is patience and scale. The Chinese, when they build in Africa, it's a 10-year horizon. They try to speak the local language and they operate very differently. I would say them, it's not relationship driven per se, which is a bit of a downfall, but they win through patience and scale. And I really think that, just to close out, some of the notes I made is like, if you are a Westerner trying to do business in markets in sub-Saharan Africa, whether that's Kenya, Congo, Ivory Coast, you name it, or you're a member of the diaspora wanting to come back and build, I think a few things. One, change your time horizon. We have to learn to be patient, because patience goes with number 2, which is investing in relationships before you make a deal. I know it's exhausting. Well, Nohemie, I don't want to just like back up myself, move to Congo for 4 years like you did, and then hope for a contract to come through. Unfortunately, those 4 years is the price that you have to pay in order to get the good deals. Relationships, they take time. And I think number 3, stop moralizing quote unquote corruption. No one likes corruption. And if you do, you're a bit psychotic. No one does. However, you will be lying to yourself trying to come into these markets and trying to be like the know-it-all, the more police. Like, no, stop it. Like, you don't even have that kind of power. So why are you wasting your time? See things for what they are, operationalize that cost, and move accordingly. And I think number 5, this is a big one. Ladies and gentlemen, find the right facilitator. If you want to call them broker, be my guest. You need people. You need people on the ground that you can trust, whose job is that they have relationships with governments. They have relationship with that person. They have relationship with that person. And they need a small percentage. And when I say small, I don't mean you cheap them out. I don't mean this business deal. If this facilitator helps you move the good from point A to point B, and you're gonna make $100K in that deal, and then you pay that person $500 or $100, I'm sorry, that's horrible. You need to pay them a decent amount. I think a $100K deal, I really think $1,000, $2,000 is actually fair. At least minimum about $800 or something. Pay them on time, pay them accordingly. I think the best facilitators are actually those, before you do the deal, they tell you how much they charge. Based on that, you negotiate. But in negotiation, ladies and gentlemen, don't get people to the point where you're giving them pennies and in turn, you're making all the money. That's not okay either. People have to be incentivized and motivated so that later on, as you keep doing business with this facilitator, you're doing business and you're doing well and they're moving their goods. Everybody's happy. That being said, all right, ladies and gentlemen, I think I talked enough for today. I really think that I hope this helps. And again, it's not to throw shade, but it's just to chat about what I'm observing on the ground so that it can help you navigate these markets better. And no, DRC is not an opaque market. You just have to know how to navigate it and know how to play the game of monies. And as always, please subscribe and make sure to check out my Substack below. The link is there, and I'll see you next time.